Welcome to the Working Audio Tools podcast, the home of all things audio mixing and mastering, the podcast where we occasionally, not as regularly as I would like, constructively critique mixers, but where we do regularly get audio professionals from the YouTube and audio industries to pick their brains and give you guys genius bits of advice from those doing the job and in the know. Now, this week we are starting with, I think, what might be a rant. Paul?
Right, okay, so I just want to get this over and done with very quickly. Now, obviously, with this being a podcast, we do obviously want to communicate with you in the comment section. We do want it to be a place where we can, connect and, talk as audio engineers.
As long as it's bullet points.
Let's not get into that, Jesus. When it comes to conversating with us, right, we're happy to conversate. Sometimes I can take as much as, 10 minutes, like just replying to a comment because I'll look over it, double check it, and I'm like that way with my autism. Now, I'm happy to do that and get in the weeds with yous, but all I ask in return is that yous don't turn into snarky little arseholes, right? I know it sounds like pretty rough, but I'm just going to be honest with you, right? I'm going to be as honest with you as I can. I treat this podcast like my home, like my house, right? Like me and Ed have a shared flat, and I treat it that way, in the same way that if you guys were to come in, I would be as, courteous as I could, and, would get into it, right? But if you started, speaking to me like a piece of shit and you just were like a snarky little arse, and I genuinely do feel in some of the comments, especially in last week's video, I felt there was a little bit of a mon-then kind of culture where people think they're a little bit hard and they have a bigger pair of bollocks than they actually do. Now, that's the internet for you, but we just don't have place for it, right? And I say guys because I know our stats, and I think we are 100% male, which is an absolute shame. It is an absolute shame. So I'm going to say I'm happy, and me and Ed are happy to converse with you, but just don't be dicks, okay? If you want to be smarmy, if you want to get into, be a troll, then fuck off someplace else. We are here to communicate with you. Yes, we are not perfect. Sometimes we get a little bit heated in some of the debates, especially me. But, it's all love, you know what I mean? All good vibes, and that's all I want to say. So, if you're an arsehole, fuck off. Let's get into the episode, which kind of brings me...
The irony is that will probably attract more troll comments than any other of our other videos, Paul.
Engagement for the win. All that kind of early rant brings me on to one of the reasons why I think probably 80% of the time is the reasons why we get into these kind of snarly, horrible, nasty, toxic comment sections. And it is a dirty, dirty word because it's a word that affects all of us. And that word, right, brace yourself, is confirmation bias. Yes, confirmation bias. It is something that affects every single one of us. I don't know a human being on the planet that isn't affected by confirmation bias in some way. Now, I love the fact that there are still people that have commented to me and told me that they are immune. Ed, they are immune from confirmation bias. What a lot of shite.
I'm immune. I've never spent 10 grand on a set of speakers and raved about them for a year. It's not happened.
Right, now...
And then sold them.
Exactly, I know. So, look, we all understand, right, that confirmation bias is a thing and it is polluting YouTube. And I understand the reason why that happens is, mostly because many people value the things that they invest in, and normally they have to work very, very, very hard to invest in those things, and they want to justify those products. Now, I want to have an open discussion about confirmation bias because I genuinely do believe that for many people, me, Ed, all of us, I think confirmation bias is something that if you don't manage, it will adversely affect or negatively affect your career. Because what it's going to do is it's going to make you very narrow-minded, and it's not going to really open doors for development. In my journey, I personally felt that the more I let confirmation bias sink in, the less open I was to learning. And the less open you are to learning, then you're kind of just going to curb your career. And you're going to basically stop giving yourself the opportunities for, experiencing life. It's okay to make mistakes and know what is okay to spend money and realise that, sometimes you were duped, or maybe you bought something because you thought you were going to like it and turns out you don't like it, and you've maybe lost a lot of money. It's a learning experience, and it's something that we should learn from instead of sticking with it and being, so unbelievably stubborn to the point that we have to go online and chastise people and get really toxic and get sometimes extremely personal, all because somebody has a negative opinion on something that we like. Well, okay, let's just get into our own confirmation bias first, right? I'll be honest with mine. It's something that I think I manage pretty well, but there are times that I do get hit with confirmation bias. I probably, in terms of something that took me a long time to accept, was Waves. I remember, because I'd spent a lot of money on Waves before this whole YouTube thing. I spent over £1,000 on Waves plugins, over maybe the space of 2-3 years. And for a long time, I was so sure that Waves plugins were the best because so-and-so were using them. And basically it was because I spent so much money. And I was forcing myself to use these Waves plugins. And then it was only until I started doing YouTube and I started doing tests and I started doing blind tests and I started getting into Plugin Doctor, I started to see the reality of some of these plugins. And I came to the kind of realization that when it comes down to it, plugins are basically bullshit. And you don't need, 3 Pultec plugins, 8 SSL plugins, 4 API plugins. You don't need it all. And once I learned that it was okay to accept that I'd wasted a lot of money, it actually made me a better engineer because it made me be okay with the fact that I'd made a mistake. And then all of a sudden I learned that it was okay to make mistakes. And I am a person that still to this day makes mistakes. I make mistakes in mixing, recording, YouTube. There'll be times that I maybe do a YouTube video and I might miss something out, and that is okay. But it seems to be that what we do in this industry, from what I see on YouTube, is that we wrap ourselves in the tools, not our skills. It's like the tools become us and they become a part of who we are. Especially Neumann guys. Jesus Christ. Right. And this isn't all of you, but there is a lot of Neumann guys, and Ed knows it very well from his Neumann videos. There are people that obsess over Neumann so much that if you don't have a good experience with Neumann, you've got the shittiest room, you've got a shit pair of ears, and you're not a professional engineer. When obviously that's absolutely bullshit because speakers are very subjective, and again, every room is different. And, you could have a great room and still not like them. I know people that really don't like professionals that don't like Neumanns, but I know engineers that do love them. And I think that we get ourselves so wrapped up in our own opinions and our own confirmation bias that we can never, ever see somebody else's opinion. And it's almost like if somebody has a negative opinion or they don't vibe with something that we use, it's like it's a personal attack on us. And it's a personal attack on our career. And it devalues, the skill set that we have. And I think it's something that if we learn to manage this, honestly, it will, one, create a much better environment for those coming up. I speak to quite a lot of producers and a lot of, people in their teens, early 20s looking to get into this industry. And, their first 40 into it is looking into YouTube. And honestly, so many of them say to me, Paul, it's scary. It puts me off wanting to get into this industry because there's just a ton of elitism and there's, you need to buy this, you need to buy that. But then he says you need to buy that and he says, no, that's shit in it. And a lot of people, young people are getting very, very, very confused because all they're seeing is a bunch of opinions that are based on, people's confirmation bias. Now, many people have said that I am sometimes too biased towards science and that science isn't everything. And, you should use your ears. Now, I've made a video on YouTube about, just using your ears. And yeah, it's important that there is times that you use your ears. We are audio engineers. But I always believe that you back it up with science. And if you use the both, then obviously science can give you not an informed decision, but it can give you context to some of the things that you are hearing. And then maybe you can learn certain things about something that you thought was a certain sound. For example, many people don't realize that they're listening to a colored sound, on their headphones, and they actually prefer it when actually many of us think you actually should be listening, through a clean linear sound. I made a whole video about mixing on headphones and my experiences. And there is such a thing, it's fact, it's science, there is such a thing as a colored sound and a clean sound. But what many people get confused about is that a colored sound is actually something that many people prefer. because in reality, a clean linear sound can be seen as sterile, boring, unmusical. I hate that fucking word. Yeah, many people just won't like it. And then what they do is they get frustrated that they've been, say, mixing on a colour sound for years and years. And then when somebody comes in with a bit of science and a bit of extra information, they get, all uppity, and all of a sudden it's like, well, you're wrong. And this is something we need to get away from, is this whole thing of right and wrong. Yeah, there is science that is theoretically, there's a right and wrong for certain things. Like there is a time when something's coloured and something's not coloured. There is times when something's quiet and something's loud. There's obvious things like that. But I think that we're getting ourselves, as a whole community, me and Ed included, we are getting ourselves in a place where we are allowing the things that we use to consume who we are and how we converse with other people. It's quite honestly, I say the audio world is a bit like the Wild West sometimes. And that's why me and Ed don't go on forums anymore. I don't believe in, the Facebook forums, and especially forums that are for a certain brand. I mean, talk about fucking buying into confirmation bias. Like, again, I know the Acoustica lovers page. Jesus Christ. I was on it and it was a bit of fun. But it got to the point when, somebody would say something negative about Acoustica, and Giancarlo, the CEO, would make a post, and he would just send lots and lots of Acoustica lovers, to send hate on, content creators, or like somebody that says something bad.
That's absolutely not on.
And it happened, I mean? And, but that happens like indirectly in a lot of other forums as well. It's not just Acoustica, right? And sometimes a lot of these forums, the manufacturers or developers themselves aren't even involved in them. But it's like people get into this gang culture, and it could be, like a plugin, it could be a Slate VSX culture. And somebody's like, yeah, mix on Harmon and planar magnets. Oh, no, we must burn them down at the stake. No, this is not happening. How dare he say he doesn't like Slate VSX? Impossible. And it's like we get ourselves so wrapped up in what other people think, when in reality, the only thing, and we've talked about this many times from the people we've had on the podcast, the only thing that matters is your client. Nothing else matters. If you wrap yourself up in what other people say and what other people are doing, then all you're going to do is just get yourself in a place where you're just in a ball of constant frustration and pent-up anger, which is going to come out in other parts of your life. I remember when I started YouTube and I was getting into all these debates and discussions, and people being really angry and really fucking toxic with me, especially at the start. That got to me, and I would let that boil in my personal life. Maybe it could be, again, maybe you would be agitated with my wife, maybe I was a bit agitated with my kids, maybe I was agitated at work and I was letting things get to me. And like, this is a massive, massive, massive problem. And it's really disheartening for me to see so much positivity in this podcast. There's so much great things and great discussions, and we've built such a great audience of people who, again, we've met some of you at Gearfest, and some of the things you said to us were really heartwarming. Like, I remember one guy, he was quite nervous, and he was like, I just want to say that you guys are like, I never miss it, an episode, and you really, really helped me, and I really value everything that you are doing. Like, that's great for us to know. So there's lots of great things to take from what we do, but it is disheartening to see such childish behaviour. Like, I do think confirmation bias just turns us into massive children. I mean, there's times that I've been fucking childish, and I've got into a debate, and it's just like, no, you've got to be wrong for me to be right, and the two of you think the same way, and before you know it, you're arguing and wasting your time, for the result to be the exact same. I'm right, you're wrong. So yeah, that's where I think the problem is. Ed, I would like for you to kind of discuss a little bit about some of your confirmation bias, because we did have little arguments, over the years. But I do think you're in a very good place, and I think that most people could take way more learnings from your experience, and especially in the past 3 months with some of the the decisions that you've made. Talk a little bit about your confirmation bias. Could be from when you were younger to like recent. Just like have a chat.
I mean, I was listening to that thinking, right, he's covering everything here. So it's been emotional, and it's been a short episode. A couple of things. You make a very good point about the podcast and the community being a house. And I had this chat with Mike Enjo from Creative Source this week, who, if anyone listening uses Cakewalk or Studio One, he's the go-to guy on YouTube for those doors. And he said the same thing, on his channel. If you want to participate in people's communities, treat it like you're going around to someone's house and speak to them respectfully, because that's what happened after my Gen 2 video. I just drew a line of, do you know what? If you're going to be a dick, you forfeit the right to see any of my content. I don't want you here, go away, and I don't care, and I have the power to do that. Hey there, Ed here. You may recognise my voice from doing all the other DistroKid advert segments. This time I didn't want to just do a typical advert talking about stuff to do with DistroKid. I actually wanted to give you my feedback about the service, because I genuinely do use DistroKid for uploading my music. And I know Paul does, and it turns out Dan Worrell does as well. I've used DistroKid since 2019. As you can see on the screen, I have 6 releases so far. It is genuinely super easy to use. The tracks get into Spotify within 24 hours, which is remarkable. Apple Music takes a little bit longer. I'd suggest giving that 10 to 14 days. The hyperfollow links are really useful for advanced promotion of your tracks, and the promo cards are really great visual aids for social media promotion. Ooh, I particularly like that one. DistroKid collect all the royalties from your streaming services, and here you can find an itemized breakdown of where all your income has come from. There's also a DistroKid referral where you can save your friends $10 per sign-up by creating your own VIP referral link. So with confirmation bias, I think an underlying problem is ego. Because what I see on comments on my channel is, again, the Neumann video was an interesting one for this, as you said. A lot of people hated me for that. Oh, you can't mix,
you got
get a job at McDonald's and... your room's crap and all this stuff. It's like, well, or I just don't like the speakers. Or it could be as simple as that. No, it has to be. You've got to suck if your opinion differs to mine. People, they get so wound up in, it's my way or it's wrong, my way or the highway. And my God, these are things I've had to address in therapy, personally, big time. But and I've been guilty of digging my heels in, and I've been guilty of getting upset and feeling my ego getting poked if somebody has a conflicting opinion. And I've had to do a lot of work on myself on that, because it's not positive, it's not helpful. Now, I'm usually very good at filtering myself. Some get through. One of them did on the Gen 2 video when the guy said I'd lost all credibility, and I asked him why and called him a troll. Shouldn't have done that, I admit. But I think there's an element of people feel attacked if their investment is criticised.
Yeah.
I think that's fundamentally what it is, and they feel that that's attacking their ego, and that's attacking their ability, not just their ability, but their ability to make decisions, or their lack of ability to do their own research, or their lack of effort to do their own research. And a lot of these people who are reacting probably sit there thinking, actually, yeah, I only listen to, one set of speakers. Neumann 310s are the best speakers out there. It's like, are they just the best speaker that you've heard? Because there is a difference. There's a big difference. Maybe they are the best speaker for you. And that's amazing if they are.
Yeah.
But they're not for me. And that's fine as well. There's no need to argue about this. Everyone hears things differently, as we've discussed at Gearfest. I would agree with what you said as well. I don't think you suffer from confirmation bias so much. I mean, for those listening, Paul and I do regularly have, like almost every day, like married couple, little bits of banter.
Spats.
It's all very friendly and loving, and it's because we're encouraging and helping each other. But we do play devil's advocate and question each other's decisions. And arguably, it's more Paul questioning, do you need to buy a Lynx converter?
I know.
Probably
just last
not.
week.
Like have that money and go on holiday. Is that a valid point? Do you need that? Do you need... It's like, well, yeah. So for me, yes, it's well documented now. I spent a lot of money on the PSIs, which I loved, and I still love the sound of them. And they're going to be going into my new flat in the new year, unless someone wants to buy them. They are on Reverb. No one's bought them yet. If I do sell them, I have a plan for them. But if not, they will go in my new flat, and they will be very welcome and loved in that flat, because they for many reasons, do sound incredible. But there was a while when I was thinking, okay, my mixers aren't translating here. Something's not working in the low end. What is it? It can't be the speakers. It must just be me, or it must be other, whatever. And it took me a long time to get over the fact that, okay, maybe I'd invested a lot of money in something that wasn't quite right for me. Now, there's two sides to that. One is acknowledging that is a big thing that most people just don't. And the other thing is actually understanding, and your understanding of your needs evolving. And that's what happened to me as well. Yes, I was possibly in denial, but also it took me a while to understand what it was that I needed out of a speaker. I knew what I wanted out of a speaker, and the PSIs delivered it. But what I needed wasn't that. So another aspect to this as well is associating quality with price. And this is pretty basic human psychology, to be fair, for the most part, because we get bombarded with decisions every day and so many things we have to work out. We can be lazy, and it's easy to just associate things that are of good quality with a higher price. And often that's the case. I think that goes out the window when it comes to fashion, and you can, as you said the other week, pay £200 more for some jacket with a badge that's the same jacket going into
Stone
Primark.
Island, yeah, totally, yeah.
Other brands are available. We're not sponsored by Stone Island or Primark. Although maybe we could get some money for the podcast. I'm sponsored by
should be though, because my wife's in there all the fucking time. So probably would be good if we got a Primark sponsorship. Just got this image of me and you like head to toe in Primark, which no what?
I'm disgusted you want to cheapen the brand so much, Paul. Get out.
No Tesco two-stripe here, Lund. Right, okay, we're all right.
Every little helps.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, back to price and quality. It's easy to assume that the expensive stuff is better. And for the large part, that is the case. But better is not necessarily right. And Paul, you've mentioned the Ananda Nanos. That's a great example of a headphone that's, £420. And they do something that literally no other headphone does. Even headphones that are £3,000. So you don't need the best thing. You just need the best thing for you. And if something is right for you and isn't right for someone else, there's no need to give them grief about it.
Yep.
Discuss why. Okay, what do you get out of them? Okay, I disagree. I don't get that. It doesn't work for me. Cool. I get this out of them. Cool. There's no need to slag someone off, call them an idiot, or, say you've lost all credibility on the internet now because you say this is something good. There's no need.
And, I think it can go both ways all the time. I think that on YouTube, I get why people get frustrated because there is a lot of uber positive content. There's a lot of shilling going on. And, many people are just looking for an honest opinion. But I do think what the shilling has shown me is that there is too much of an abundance, and we've talked about this before, that there is a trend here where people don't want to make their own buying decisions. They want somebody else to make their buying decision for them. And then somebody else's confirmation bias becomes their confirmation bias. And I find it crazy that it almost feels like YouTubers are trying to sell confirmation biases. But what makes it even worse is that they're confirmation biases that are not even their own. Where, me and you are very, very honest in what we use. And that's one thing that we always stand by is transparency. We always talk about what we actually like, especially with me. If there's something that I don't like, you'll know about it pretty quick.
I'm a bit more diplomatic and,
You are diplomatic, yeah. But even, I'll give you a good example, right, about there always has to be a bit of, back and forth. There was a comment that I had that got a little bit heated, and it was about Black Lion Audio Revolution 2X2. Now, I know from Audio Science Review, Julian Krauss, Ed did a review, and my good friend Demra Chelik, who we've had on the podcast, he tried out, and again, we know all the measurements, and, the science man in me is very biased towards the science. So obviously the science will tell you that the headphone amp doesn't have a lot of gain, and even when it is only pushed a little bit, it doesn't have to be pushed hard, it'll start to distort and colour the sound. I think many people think distortion is like audible, terrible distortion. Distortion can just be coloration. Now, when I spoke to Emra about it, I remember I was in St Andrews with the girls, a lovely day. It was like an open day St Andrews University, and it was like
Beautiful up
science,
there.
magic science or something like that. And it was something about space because Madsen wanted to do it, my eldest. So we're in there, and whilst I was waiting to go in for the space thing, I'm like messaging Emma, like going, right, what did you say about the Black Lion audio? And he was like, oh, it was like the worst, probably the worst interface that I've ever tried. He was like, I remember you telling me the headphone up was shit. And he was like, yeah, bro, it was fucking shit at the start. They didn't have a lot of gains. Like we couldn't drive any of our planars with it. Just be coloured and wouldn't have enough gain. I was like, yeah, I thought that. And it was noisy as well. Yeah, it was pretty noisy in the headphone ups. And then straight away, I was like, okay, get ready for me, motherfucker. And then I sat there and I thought, no. I'd already kind of told this gentleman about, obviously, I think the issue I had was that I seen there was confirmation bias going on because he'd quoted a Sound on Sound interview, and it was basically Sound on Sound had said that this was the best headphone amp they'd ever heard. And the science man in me was, I know, Ed,
What?
I know.
Sound on Sound said that?
They said that, yeah, and I actually went and filmed it. That's how bad I am.
I will quote what you reminded me of this week that I said
Yeah.
in my review of it, which I'd forgotten I'd said, but I do stand by because now I remember it, is that you're better off having a Focusrite Scarlett headphone amp.
Yeah.
That's how shit it is. But in other areas, some people love the preamps and love the sound and that's a very polarizing interface. More than the Gen 2s, apparently.
Oh, I know, unbelievable. I know that the amount of confirmation bias that I've seen in some of the videos, especially Julian Krause's, I was like, Jesus. But the thing is, and I think this gentleman made a very good point. I didn't like the way it ended because I got that nasty way where I knew it was like would end the conversation. He was like, basically as a tidbit, it was like, yeah, Paul, I think you need to learn to be more objective. And I think that's going to have a negative impact on your career if you don't learn to be more objective. And I was like, okay, we're getting a little bit personal, a little bit nasty. But I'd obviously pissed the guy off. And at the end of the day, one thing he did make a good point of is I was trying to find out the setup that he had for it. Because what I do know is that when it comes to any headphone amp, if you have a super, super, super sensitive headphone, you could fucking drive it to adequate levels with a fucking iPhone dongle. Like there are consumer grade headphones that don't need any, so you can genuinely use a BLA and with a certain pair of headphones, and it's not going to reach the threshold of power that then starts to distort it. So it's going to be adequately clean, and it's going to power the headphones. And he reminded me of that. I don't know what setup the guy has with the headphones that he's using, but obviously me being me, I was like, my bias was coming in where I was like, yeah, but I'm trying to help you. And in my head, I was like, I'm trying to help you. In my opinion, you're a bit biased here, and you've got confirmation bias. And all I'm trying to say to you is that the sound that you really like, and the sound that you're saying Sound on Sound, saying that it sounds really good, I'm like, that's a coloured sound. Like if I was to put it through my planars, it would be coloured 100% because, especially these, these are hungry, and obviously that would go through the threshold of the power required to then where the amp starts distorting. But at the end of the day, if that gentleman is he's a bit older than me, I think he was 69 or something. But if that gentleman uses that setup and he gets great results, they translate and his clients are happy, then who the fuck am I to say anything else? But again, I think where it works two ways is that, yes, I should have been objective to go first. What pair of headphones are you using, man? And if you would have said a really sensitive pair of headphones, I would have went, no, what? Yeah, the BLA headphone amp is going to be probably suitable for your needs.
Did he say DT770s?
Oh, I don't. No, he didn't. I don't think he told me what he was using.
This reminds me of the time I did a live sound gig, and it sounded perfectly fine. And some elderly gentleman came up to me and said, "Oh, sound was terrible. The vocals were distorting." And I was like, "Well, they weren't clipping any preamps, so that's not the case." And the Allen and Heath compressors don't sound that distorted at the level I was driving them. A bit confusing and okay. And then he turned around and he had hearing aids on. And I was like, right, hang on a minute. The deafest guy in the room is telling me it's distorted. I'm going to take that criticism with a pinch of salt, to say the least.
Mm-hmm. And look, that's a good comment there, because look, that's why what it's important. The reason I'm telling the story about this comment is because everything is relative to the setup that you have. So if I was to say, all in all, in terms of a overall headphone amp, in terms of like trying to see the BLA Revolution 2X2 or whatever it is, 4x4 or whatever ones, that they wouldn't be suitable for my setup and my planars and my hungry headphones. That, yeah, as an overall headphone amp, I'm like, yeah, it's shit. But for somebody else that doesn't have, very, hungry headphones, it could work great. And it's having that, and what he was right was maybe having that bit of objectivity. However, I don't think we met in the middle. I think, the way that conversation ended was, no, I'm telling you, it sounds great. I've got how many other years of experience, and I'm telling you, they sound great. The BLA sounds great. I'm telling you, it sounds great. And that's it. I use my ears. Fuck your science. My ears are telling me that this is a great sound. And that's it. And then at the end of the day, I just went, my final comment was, well, I tried, is what it is. And at the end of the day, you know what I mean? That is what it was at the end of the day. I tried to help this gentleman because I was like, look, you might not know that you may be listening to a coloured sound, and what you think is a good sound isn't actually that good for mixing, because, we really should be listening to a clean, linear sound. But at the end of the day, why did I feel the need to then almost, I didn't realise until we were in it. He felt I was goading him a little bit, and he obviously felt I was bashing his ego, and he felt that because I was like, look, fucking hell, I was more pissed off at the Sound on Sound thing, because I was like, why did Sound on Sound say that? And actually, like, Sound on Sound, if you're ever watching this, fucking shame on you for that, because many, many people trust you, and, that's the reason why you should do stuff like science.
Shots fired.
Shots fired. I'm just going to fucking say it. But
SSL, it's official. We've moved on. Sound on Sound are on the radar.
yeah, fuck you all. But see, at the end of the day, right, what is the solution to it, right? And this is the reason why I wanted to make it, because what I realised recently was, see, me and Ed are very fortunate. This is where it gets a little bit sloppy, but we're very fortunate that we have each other, because what me and, honestly, is a little bit, no, I'm saying that me and Ed's relationship is like mine and my wife's, but what's very similar to it is that me and my wife are almost a little kind of bipolar opposites, but we work very well together. Me and Ed, in many ways, are very, very different from one another. But see, when we come together, it just comes together in a way that really works, where I help him and he helps me. And it's this swings and roundabouts where I always find that he's the objective little birdie on my shoulder a lot of the time that's like, well, think about that. And he can tell when I get in that heated Paul Third way where it's my autism is just like into like science and, no, we need to, somebody has to be right and somebody has to be wrong and the objectivity is gone. He's the master, kind of talking me off that ledge. And, there's times that, I do get very embroiled in the science and everything. And he's the one that reels me back and is like, yeah, but does it sound good? You know what I mean? MSM, he's really good at that as well, because the amount of times I'll get in touch with him and I'll be like, yeah, did you know blah, 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 this and that? And he'll be like, Ed, what's his, do you know what his reply is? What's his reply to me?
His reply is great. He just says, have you done a mix today? Paul's like, no. And he's like, then I don't care, fuck off.
Yep. And know what? That is, and I know him enough as well. He'll be like, thanks for that. But at the same time, is it important? The important thing is that you're mixing. And I think that this is what I want to share with you is I've taken a lot from that. And sometimes I need that calibration. And it is a calibration, is it kind of somebody pulling you off the ledge to go, look, snap out of it. This is not important. Arguing with people online isn't going to help your career. Okay, it's good for us because we're YouTubers and we get views and it helps, and again, we get this podcast sponsored and stuff, and we need the engagement, and I do get a lot out of engaging with people because I don't have many friends now. I didn't realise that until last week when I looked around and my wife was like, have you been in touch with your friends recently? And I was like, nah. I went, Paul, have you even got friends anymore? And I was like, I've got Ed. It's like, and I've got Emra. And it's just like,
sweetest thing you've ever said.
It's just like, yeah, you've got Ed and you've got Emra. It's like, so Ed's in London, Emra's in fucking Sweden. It's like Tim Petherick's in fucking, and I was talking about people that I only speak to like every so often. That's where it was getting to. Basically, it's like Ed and Emra are like my core people. Ed more than anybody. So I think what I want you all to take from this is that what you probably need to do is do the thing that you're fighting against, which is actually bring more people into your circle that have differing opinions from yours, Because what you'll find is if you create a circle of people around you that have different opinions than you, then you don't get fed into that world of confirmation bias. If you surround yourself with people that have the same opinions and the same viewpoints of yourself, then you'll just be more and more and more narrow-minded.
You'll be an algorithm. That's what you'll be.
Totally. You'll just be an algorithm, and YouTube will just go. Oh, it's so easy for YouTube these days, especially in audio. As soon as it knows you're a plugin geek, it's like plug in, new release, new release, new release. And I think what is important is that, especially with clients and you're working, like I'll end it with one story, right? One last story, because I've never told Ed this, and this came into my head today. I can't say who it is because I'm quite a big engineer, but I love this story. And he was talking about confirmation bias with me. I've had many very high kind of level engineers that have just randomly given me advice. I've just been kind of blessed in that way. But I love this story. Now, he's a big mastering engineer in America. And he told me the story about, and I can't even say the gear it is, but he was like, I had this very, very, very rare, very expensive piece of outboard. He wouldn't even tell me if it was a compressor or an EQ. And he said, I used to use it all the time. I was like, in the noughties, I was using it all the time. And it was just this thing where I had huge confirmation bias. And if anybody came in the studio, it was always like, that's the magic box. Don't tell fucking anybody that is the magic box. That thing makes records. Anyway, I would put it on every single record. And then I had this, I was a big artist. And for whatever reason, they came to me and they said, whoever it was, they were like, we're not vibing with this. What have you done to the record? And he went, I was like kind of taken aback. And I was well known. So I tried everything else bar the piece of gear. I was like, is it the EQ? Is it the fucking whatever it was? And he was like, I did everything else. Because in my head, I was like, it cannot be that piece of outboard, the magic piece of outboard. And then they said, no, what, this is not working. We're just going to go to somebody else. And he went, and I just thought, okay, I'll take the outboard off. So I took the outboard off, sent it back to the client, and they said, that's it. Whatever you've just done, that's it. So I said, so what was it? He went, it was a very, very coloured piece of gear. And what I would do was, normally if I knew it was like an in-the-box mix, in my head I was like, fuck, digital, right, sounds in the box. And I got to a point where it worked so many times, I just kept on putting all my mixes through it. And it sounded like it was maybe an EQ, maybe, because he said that you would always have to tweak it slightly, whatever it was, maybe a compressor. But he said, after that mix, after that master, all of a sudden I thought, right, see the next time, I'm going to actually take it in and out. Because I didn't even used to A-B, my confirmation bias was that bad. Then all of a sudden when I was A-Bing, I started choosing it less. Because it didn't work for that client, almost the sheen had been taken off it. And I was like, right, okay, I don't like it on this mix. I don't like it on this master, sorry. Don't like it on this, don't like it on that. And I got to a point when I was using it less and less and less and less, to the point where I realised I didn't need it. And then I sold it. And the reason he couldn't tell me what it was, because he went, if you ever tell the story to anybody and they know the piece of gear, then the engineer who bought it from me will know. Because when I sold it to him, I was like, yeah, that's the magic box. Yeah, I'm just needing the money. He went, I'm just needing the money. And he went, and I sold it for quite a lot of money. When really I was like, fuck, I don't even need this anymore. And I sold it to some other engineer who ended up using it quite a lot. But it's a story of, it's very easy when certain things work, it then develops a confirmation bias. But just because it works now doesn't mean it's going to work in the future. Just because your speakers work now, might be 15 years down the line, things change, genres change, expectations change, and all of a sudden the sim that you were working with that worked doesn't work anymore. Like he said, this box worked. Even I was using it for like 6 years, Paul. I was getting like all these big mixes, and all of a sudden it just wasn't working. He went, and I didn't even know what it was. And he thinks it was because it was too coloured. He went, it was one of these things where it just added a lot of vibe. So I don't know if it's maybe something like maybe like an Abbey Road thing, or maybe it was, like it was really coloured and it just was like smothered in the mix, and he thought analog warmth. And turns out that's not what people wanted. Maybe, the genre started changing and they wanted things cleaner and more punchy or whatever it was. But, even the best suffer from confirmation bias. And, there is an old saying that, if something's not broke, don't fix it. And we agree with that. And that's something that you've got to get in your head, and that's something I need to learn. I'm always tinkering and I need to stop.
But then the guy's philosophy was to use that on everything because it wasn't broke, so he didn't need to fix it. And then he realised it was broke and he fixed it. So that even that rule goes out the window, really.
Yeah, but I think the lesson to take from it was what he wanted me to learn was that, Paul, when you find something that's working, stick with it. But what you need to learn is that there may come a time when it's not suitable for purpose anymore. And you need to learn that when that confirmation bias is telling you, no, we still use it. Everybody else is wrong. It's like the client's wrong. No, everybody else is wrong. When that's when your career's fucked. When you've got to keep moving with the times. And if you look at it now, CLA is now, I don't know if he needs the money, he must do, but he's selling a shit ton of his gear. And I disagree with that as well because he's charging more just because he's fucking got the CLA signature on it. Ed, have you seen some of the prices that he's charging for some of that gear? It's fucking astronomical. But there you go. Some of the analog gear that he's used, and he's a big analog lover. Used it on so and so record, Tina Turner, whatever. He's selling them all, and maybe because he's got to the point where he's just like, it's just not working for me anymore. I just don't need it. That's just not me. I don't. At the end of the day, I hardly ever hear CLA mixes anymore. But it's like I think there's so many cases in the industry that people have had to adapt. People were on tape, people were on, consoles. People moved off consoles. Dave Pensado was another one. He was mixing on his SSL for years and years and years, and then he moved completely in the box because he wasn't letting that confirmation bias in the back of his head saying, yeah, but it's analog, it's the SSL, that's what everybody's using. He did the right thing. He was like, no, let's test my confirmation bias. He was doing, ABs, and he found that his in-the-box mixes were working, his Pro Tools mixes were working better for him. And then all of a sudden, he moved more into the box. Spike mostly in the box, Serban completely in the box. What you will find is that when you challenge your own confirmation biases, sometimes, you don't have to do it all the time, but it's okay for you to buy something and for it to work, and then for whatever reason it doesn't work. And if you have that constant just reevaluation every so often, maybe every 6 months to a year, look at your outboard gear and sit there and think, right, when's the last time I actually used that? I've not used that in fucking the last 8 months.
That's what I've just done.
Yeah, totally.
And it's quite refreshing. I feel like I'm downsizing, which is exciting.
Yeah, if you think, again, I knew, and it's funny looking back now, when Ed bought the AMS, I knew that was fucking getting sold. I was like, why did you buy it? It's like, it's a reverb, just use the plugin. And he was like, yeah, no, but it's better. And then he hardly
it did sound better than the plugin. I never got around to
that.
doing an A/B, but it genuinely did sound audibly better than the plugin. However, it was a ball ache, like it says digital recall, the programming, anyway, whatever. I sold that, so I don't want to say anything bad about it for the guy who bought it off me.
Yeah, and that works the same with plugins as well. I'm waiting to do a video on it where I go through all the plugins, and a Studio One's got a feature where it tells you when's the last time you used the plugin. And
really?
Yeah. So I'm just going to go into it and go, right, bang, bang. I'm just going to delete stuff. Why have this clog up your system and be something else to distract you? Plugins are another one, man. But again, I don't need to tell people about.
Yeah, you need all the CPU for your Acoustica plugins. So
hardly ever use them. Even there, Acoustica. Again, I did have a confirmation bias with Acoustica for a while, but then I let the science do the talking, and then I started doing ABs. Then I started to learn more, and I started to give myself more context, and I was constantly challenging my own confirmation bias.
I've got a bombshell for you, Paul.
What? Tell me.
Is looking at the science the equivalent of mixing with your eyes?
If you only...
Lady and gentlemen listening, we will get back to you on another episode about that question. In summary, though, I think people ultimately will get defensive in online forums because they can. Yeah. I think a lot of people don't like being told what to do, don't being told that they're wrong, and a lot of people could be more aware of how much their ego is influencing their pushback and their retaliation. And if you really feel the need to cut someone down online to make yourself feel better about yourself, yeah, that might be one for therapy. And I can speak from personal experience. But just to summarize, I saw a great meme on Instagram, and I think I sent it to you and Chris Graham. It says, "You see, boy, people don't want to hear your opinion. They want to hear their opinion coming out of your mouth.
Correct. Absolutely.
It's so true.
100%.
That is the internet in a nutshell.
Yep. And that's where we'll end it, right? Only thing I want you to take from it is, remember, it's all about the ear, not the gear, all the time, right? If you constantly work more on your ear and you don't let the gear become the engineer, right? Remember, the engineer is in here, it's up top. The engineer's not in the gear, it's not in the analog gear, it's not in the plugins, it's not in everything else. I know it's nice to sit there and play with faders, and I just bought a fucking Fairchild clone, for fuck's sake, right? There'll be an element of confirmation bias somewhere down the line, but again, you know me, I'm going to do tons and tons and tons of tests. Then I might get to a point where I end up fucking selling it, right? Maybe not, because I do.
On that bombshell, let's dangle that carrot and leave it till next time to reveal what piece of gear Paul did buy, because it was quite an elaborate purchase.
Yeah, it was.
And we'll reveal, maybe roughly, won't say exactly, but roughly how much we'll say what they retail for in the next video, and we'll go from there.
Yes. And there you have it. My name is Paul Third. That's Ed Thorne. And please don't be a dick in the comments. And don't decide. Actually, I don't think there's any confirmation bias. I don't think we've mentioned any products that people could. Maybe a few Neumann people will get stuck in. But if you're arseholes, then we'll just block you, hide you. Don't care. And for all you people that do want to get stuck in and do want to have a really nice conversation down below, feel free to comment and have a nice discussion about it and see how we can improve all the nastiness and all the confirmation bias that we've got in this game. And there you have it. We'll see you next week.
DistroKid sponsors the Working Audio Tools podcast, and 30% off your first year subscription can be found in the podcast show notes and the YouTube video description. Hyperfollow is the easiest way to place all of your content in one single place, making finding all of your content super easy for your audience. Upload artwork for your release, edit the information, and apply links to all of the streaming platforms your music is going to be available, which of course on DistroKid is potentially all of them that exist now and even in the future. Add social media buttons so your audience can find you and your latest music video. Creating a beautiful landing page with a preview of your music is easy with Hyperfollow. Hyperfollow links can be created for all of your releases, and it enables you to create pre-save links for your audience to pre-order your music before it's released. This link is shareable on all of your platforms and a great way to promote your next release, only with DistroKid.